Great. Hey, everyone. Mark, have I got you there with me?
Yes, you do. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. I can hear you, and I have hit the record button, so we are away to the races. Thank you for the fun music to get us started there. And welcome, everyone. It looks like most of you have arrived, so that's great. Thanks for being here. Today, we are going through all things to do with FP Accountant. I'm just going to take us through a couple of slides, and then I'm going to run a quick little poll as well, and then I'll hand the reins over to Mark for us to go from there. So, as you know, you're on the welcome page here for the Press the Easy button session today, all about using FP Accountant. Your hosts are myself and Mark, and a little bit about our agenda. You can all see that there, just learning how to sync FP invoices and expenses with QuickBooks, learning what to do if an error occurs, and discovering how the different types of invoices go into QuickBooks and how to make changes. So before we get started, I'm going to run a quick little poll here. That should be showing up on your screens. Mark, are you seeing the poll? This is my hope.
Yeah, I see it there.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So we'll leave that up for just a moment here, and that'll just help us get an idea of who the audience is today. So thanks so much, everyone, for being so quick to fill that in. Looks about a quarter of you have voted so far, so thank you. Mark, how long do you think we're going to go today?
I
That
am
wasn't meant to be a
predicting.
joke, but
I'm predicting an hour or less. I do apologize for going so far over last week. I underestimated the amount of content I had to show, so I
that's
promise not to keep
okay.
y'all
No.
here as long as it lasts.
No, that's okay. And we did record last week's session, so for those of you who haven't seen it, you'll find it if you go in your own system, just hover over help and choose what's new. You'll see it listed there, and so you can always fast forward as needed over either Mark and or I to get to the data you want to get to. Okay, well, we're just about a minute there. It looks like most of you have voted, so I'm going to close our poll. And then, Mark, what I'm going to do is make you the presenter. So let me just figure that piece out and then you can take it away. So hopefully you're seeing that now, and I see your screen, Mark, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, and you're seeing my demo version, my cursor hovering over the word demo there.
I do, yes.
Okay, awesome. Just want to make sure I have the right screen up. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining in today. I'm looking forward to going through this webinar on FP Accountant and using it to sync Function Point and QuickBooks. A few things I want to mention really quickly. Do please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar as always. A little bit of a different style today, however. We try to answer as many questions as we can during the webinars as possible, and that's when we are still going to attempt to do that today. However, I just want to mention that because of the complexity of the subject matter, and oftentimes, the really specific scenario type questions we get when it comes to QuickBooks and accounting and FP Accountant and all that stuff. We're predicting that a lot of the questions being asked today we may have to take offline. With that being said, this is a really good forum to be asking your questions, even if we can't answer them at the time that they are asked. That we're going to be able to take those and catalog them, get back to you all each individually. Provide answers to your questions, or maybe jump on a quick call to review things with you. So please do feel free to ask questions, and just know that if we're not able to answer them today, which may be the case for some of them, then we will get to them at another time.
Hey, Mark,
Well,
sorry. I know
yeah.
you were mid-speech there, but we've had a couple of people just speak up already and say that they're having a little trouble hearing you. Now, I hear you fine, but I mean, I'm also in the same building as you, so that may help. So I don't know if maybe your mic, if you could just whatever you can do, just so everyone can hear you really clearly, would be
Okay.
appreciated.
I'm gonna put it as close to my mouth as possible. You hear me breathing. I apologize about that, but hopefully that makes it a bit better. Yeah, I'm not really sure why it's lower. I have all my volume and everything turned up. Maybe I can actually take a quick look here.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I hear you okay, but just before we got too far down the road there, I wanted to make sure that we addressed any sort of sound issues as best we could. But anyone, if you're continuing to experience issues, just feel free to ping me, and then I'll interrupt Mark because that's good fun.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully that's a bit better, and I'll try to just generally speak up as well. Okay, great. So one other thing I wanted to mention really quickly, and this is almost like a bit of a disclaimer, is that one thing that I've done today over the last 3 hours or so is run through some scenarios we're going to be covering today with FP Accountant and QuickBooks. And in the process of doing that, I've deleted and recreated my QuickBooks company file and reset up that integration probably 10 times today. So if by any chance I happen to have made a mistake in the last one and I need to reset up that integration and we get an error message right off the start, I do apologize. I'm not predicting that's going to happen, but I just want to throw it out there just in case it does. It'll take me maybe 2 or 3 minutes just to fix it if that happens, but I'm doubting that it will. So let's jump in. So the process that we're going to be covering today is first we're going to be going through creating and syncing a single invoice. We're going to be looking at the process for editing that invoice and what that looks like. We're then going to be making a payment on that invoice and syncing it back, that payment back into QuickBooks or into Function Point. You may have noticed that in the overview of the webinars, the individual webinars in the series, the third webinar touches on syncing payment information back. And I changed my mind on that literally like in the last hour or so because I thought it would make a lot more sense just to do everything cradle to grave right now, cover the whole payment process on the same webinar. It doesn't really take much time to do so, and it just makes more sense to show it all now. The next thing we're going to be taking a look at is syncing an expense. I'm going to show some potential errors that you might get around syncing an expense, some common ones that have come up for clients of ours. The next thing we're going to look at is syncing a multi-job single invoice over to QuickBooks. And then after that, we're going to be looking at syncing a multi-invoice, so where we have multiple invoices and we're syncing them all independently. What we're going to do after that is create a deposit, sync that deposit over to QuickBooks, make a payment on that deposit, create an interim invoice relating to that deposit, and then sync that over as well. And then from there, I'm going to touch on just a few possible problems you may encounter, things like inactive clients, name changes, how everything kind of interacts with each other, and potential problems you might come up, might hit you while you're going through that sync process. So let's jump in. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating all these invoices as we go through, but I'm not going to be touching in any detail on the creation of the invoices. In fact, I'm going to be moving through that process really quickly. If you happen to not be on last week's webinar, please do watch the recording of it. It's going to cover all things the creation of invoices. So I'd ask you hold your questions on the creation of invoices today. Watch the video. If you still have questions after that, of course, please do feel free to contact us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to a job. Have one in mind, I'm actually not seeing it there. I'm going to do a quick job find for the word signage. I have a job here called dealership signage I want to create an invoice for. So from my jobs details page up at the top, I'm going to choose to add an invoice. I'm going to make an interim invoice for 50% of my estimated amount. Create that. That is my invoice created. I have an invoice here for $7,500. Now, on the left side, you'll notice that I have my services tied to my income items in QuickBooks. It's really important that you watch the video that outlines the setting up of fp.Accountant. It's going to help you to understand how these items are tied together. First things first, if you do not have an item tied to this, it's not even going to allow you to save the invoice. It's going to say, sorry, this field must be filled in. That's the first error message. That used to be something that you would get when you tried to sync it. We've now made it so that it won't even allow you to save if you have that not filled in. So that's the first potential problem you could find, is not having the service tied to the income item. With the invoice, what we need to do here is choose to post it. I have a button up at the top that says unposted. That's representing the current state of the invoice. If I select that, it marks the invoice as posted. If an invoice is posted, it is then ready to go over into QuickBooks. Now in QuickBooks, what we'll see here is I do not have this customer, North Shore Auto Group. They do not exist in my system. So when I choose to synchronize with FP, the system is actually going to create that customer for me. It's also going to create the job for me. It's going to create anything that doesn't exist and use anything that does exist. So notice North Shore Auto Group, dealership signage, $7,500, invoice $128. If I open it up, notice that the services have been tied to the items in QuickBooks. Client has been created, the job has been created. Now we're looking at this, but fp.Accountant is still going through its drill, still running the process. You're going to want to wait until you see that OK complete before you do anything else. Now let's say that we made a mistake and we were actually supposed to only invoice maybe 25% or something else. We just need to make a change. One thing I recommend doing, and a recent upgrade means that you really actually technically no longer need to do this. But if you need to make a change to an invoice, close it down in QuickBooks. Don't have it open. Close it down, get rid of it. And then what we'll see now is, that invoice for $7,500, $128, it's not open. I haven't double-clicked on it yet. It's closed. If I come back into this particular invoice, we will find it in a status of exported. Exported means it's been sent to QuickBooks. If I choose to edit this, let's say that we're going to change this to, let's just knock off a couple $100 here. 150, 150, and 1,025. Knock $300 off that invoice. It's now at 7,200. Notice the status has been changed to repost. It didn't go to unposted, it went to repost because we made an edit. We open up QuickBooks here, choose to synchronize with FP. Then what we're going to see is that invoice that was in a status of repost went from 7,500 to 7,200 is going to be adjusted automatically. Notice 7,500 went to 7,200, no problem. The next thing I'd like to show is payment on that invoice and syncing it back. Before I do, I just want to check in. Emma, any questions at all so far?
No, thanks for checking, Mark. And at some point I thought you might be interested to know sort of the division of who we've got on the call today as far as that poll went, but I certainly don't want to interrupt you with that now, but when you're ready, I'd be happy to share that with you if you're interested.
Yeah, no problem. Let's enter this payment, and then we'll see a bit about that. I noticed
Yeah.
that I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's jump in here. I'm going to just pull up this invoice and make a payment to it really quickly. Now I have a $7,200 invoice here. In function point, it is marked as exported, and it is unpaid. Payment amount 0. In QuickBooks, what we're going to do is choose to payment, receive a payment on this. $7,200. Let's say they paid by check, and it's there's a check number here. Want to put in there. We can then choose to save that. That is now marked as paid. So this invoice is now marked as paid. When we choose to run the next sync, and you can run that sync whenever you want. If you want to do it right away, go ahead and do it right away. If you have a process like maybe once a week or once a month, no problem. If you want to run that sync after every change that you do, then you can. I would probably recommend having some sort of predetermined amount of time, some sort of process that you might follow. Let's say every Thursday at 3 o'clock, you're going to choose to run that sync. And everything that's posted is then going to be brought over to QuickBooks. And any payments, like what we're going to see here, is then brought back into function point. Payment amount, $7,200. One thing that I should mention, here's a potential error right here. Payment method. Right as I clicked sync, I thought about that. That should have been brought in. And the reason that it wasn't is because in QuickBooks, I had the payment method as check. In function points, if I go into my integrated accounting, in my payment methods, I have check being matched to cash. I don't have a QB payment method of check anywhere, so that was actually an error. So that's why we don't have that payment method being brought in. If I were to rerun that sync, then we would find the payment method would fill in. So basically, with a single invoice, it's all really simple. You're creating the invoice, you're posting it. Whenever you choose to run that sync, be it every day or whenever you make a change, or maybe every Thursday at 3 o'clock, whenever it may be, it's going to bring over all the posted items. Any payments that were made in QuickBooks are going to be brought back and reflected in function point. The awesome thing about that is that you do not need to mark payments in both locations, and then at any time you can navigate to, say, a company details page and see all the invoices, which ones are paid and which ones are outstanding. You can hit multiple payments to an invoice if you want as well. So, Emma, I noticed the poll was split pretty much 33% for each option. Was that correct?
Yeah, very evenly divided everyone today, it looks like, between those of you who haven't set it up yet, who've synced a few invoice expenses, and people who are actively doing it. So that's a really nice mix, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great. For those who haven't set it up yet, of course, the videos is going to give you a really good overview of exactly how to set that up. It does cover all the bases. I highly recommend watching it, but of course, please do feel free to reach out to us if you need additional assistance. We'll be happy to help you there. So let's just take a quick look at that job here. If we look at our invoice, we're going to find our paid invoice, the balance is 0, and of course if we select it, we're going to find it as an exported status. Everything is A-OK. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the process for syncing an expense. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an expense. Add expense. Fill in my details. I'm going to choose my supplier. It's a company called Starboard Custom Printing. Maybe I'll enter a description. This goes into the memo description in QuickBooks. I can then put in a quoted for PO, let's say $1,000 for this item. This is going to go against our dealership signage job as well. This is going against, I believe there was a printing service group. There was. Select our printing expense type. Notice the cost of goods sold filled in automatically. This is based on how it is mapped in the admin section. So like the video will let you know, in admin, under integrate accounting, we can set up the QuickBooks integration where we are tying our expense types to the QuickBooks cost of goods sold. So that's very important. We then have the specific description of the expense. Enter our values. So we're purchasing 1,000 items and we're paying $1 a piece. Track any discounts we're getting from our vendor, any tax groups that are applicable for the purchase, tip if it's something like a meal or a cab ride. Markup percentage fills in automatically based on the client and the expense type, but we can adjust that or override it. Click Save, and that's our expense created. Now, notice that it says unposted. And when I try to post this, it's going to give me an error, and I'm going to tell you why. And this is a really common one. When I hit unposted, it's going to say, sorry, fp.Accountant is set up to use the reference number as a primary key for the QuickBooks integration. What this means is that there is a setting in Function Point. I'm going to show you where that setting is, where you're able to choose, do you want QuickBooks to pick up the manually entered reference number or the automatically assigned PO number? Either option is valid. In the admin section, under System Setup and System Preferences, the very first tab you see is System, and you have an option to export reference number instead of PO number. Now, typically, that's let's pull up a quick expense find here for today as opposed to going the long way around. Expense date today. Now, oftentimes that reference number is going to be the vendor invoice number. So the vendor sent us an invoice. I'm going to enter that invoice number into my reference number field. Maybe it was, 106. Save that. We are now able to post this expense. Now, if in the admin section you choose to use the PO number, then that's what's going to be brought over. In this case, we're using the manually assigned reference number. I think most companies prefer to do that because it represents the invoice number from the vendor. Furthermore, this is a multi-line system. I have one expense being entered here. If there was multiple expenses that all need to go, from this vendor invoice, then we could have those multiple expenses. Let's open up QuickBooks here. The process is going to be really similar. I like to close everything down here. Take a look at the vendors. I don't have any vendors in here. When I choose to synchronize with FP, it's going to create our vendor. Starboard Custom Printing is going to be brought in here in a second. It's going to create the expense as well, of course, as a bill. So Starboard Custom Printing, it's our vendor there. And we have our bill 106. So it brings over the expense as a bill to pay. And we can open it up and see the memo description of the specific expense. We can see the reference number, amount due, and so forth. Now, payment on expenses is something that is not referenced in Function Point. You would mark you would pay this bill as you would any other. That's not going to be brought into Function Point. There's nothing in Function Point that's related to that. When we do look at our external expense, we are going to find it in a status of exported. Now, what I often tell agencies is that as far as your staff are concerned, when they see an exported expense, that means it's paid. Now, you may not actually have given the check or charged the credit card or however you may pay the bill. The money may not be in the vendor's bank account, but it is exported, it is in QuickBooks, it is a bill to pay, and as far as staff are concerned, that item has been paid. So let's say in a real world scenario, you do not want to bill your clients for an expense if you haven't paid the vendor yet. then as far as the staff are concerned, if they see it as an exported status, then they know that it's over in QuickBooks, and it's as far as they are concerned, it's been paid. Now you might pay net 90, net 60, net 30. I'm not sure. However you choose to pay your bills is totally up to you. But as far as staff are concerned, if it's exported, it's in QuickBooks, and it's a bill that's being paid, and it's time to invoice the client for that. So that's the basics of the expense is pretty straightforward, just like before. The vendors created, and if the job didn't exist, in this case it did, it was our dealership sign-up job, it would create the job as well. But it did exist, so it didn't duplicate the job. It just used that job. So this job here. Moving on to multi-job single invoices. Before we do, any questions, Emma?
Hey, Mark. We have had a couple in, but I don't want to kind of throw anything at you that's maybe not best answered in the session. So I think you and I will probably take a couple of these offline. And for those of you who have asked questions that we haven't given an answer, do know that we will certainly be addressing them ASAP once the session's wrapped up. But nothing that has come up for the immediate answering, Mark.
No problem. And then, once we get through everything, maybe if we do have a little bit of time, if I don't go so far over like I did last time, then we can attempt to address some of them based on, Emma, what you think would be addressable in the session.
Perfect.
If any. Otherwise, of course, like I said, we are going to provide detailed answers with all the questions that we will follow up with.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
No problem. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a single invoice with multiple jobs in it and send that to QuickBooks. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do a job find. And I'm going to do a job find based on one company. Now, if I were to, say, create an invoice at the project level, the same thing would be accomplished. In this case, I'm going to pull up all of my jobs for a client called Great Atlantic Insurance. So everything for Great Atlantic. Click Find. I have a list of all of my, in this case, actually I do have some invoice jobs, but all my jobs for Great Atlantic Insurance. In fact, yeah, I want to narrow that down a little bit. My apologies. Show me everything for Great Atlantic that is either open or in production. So that's pulling up a list of jobs. Up at the top, I'm going to choose to create a batch invoice. And then you'll notice that it says that there's a checkbox here that says create one invoice. I want to create one invoice with multiple jobs on it, so I'm going to select this. I'm going to take the tax group out for simplicity's sake, just for today's presentation. But of course, if your taxes are set up appropriately, then and you have different taxes for all the different jobs, the system will handle that for you as long as you have them set up correctly. But let's go ahead and let's create an invoice for maybe 25% of estimated amount for all of these. Select Create. And that has brought us to our invoice batch add page. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just going to add in all the jobs I want to invoice for. Again, please do check out the invoicing video. Some of this is going a bit over your head. But here I have a list of all the jobs that was in my find, the result of my search. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in an invoice for a bunch of these. Let's say 3. Now, if I want to edit those invoices, then I can. And this is where we will be able to see the income item tied to the service. Now, earlier in the demo and the webinar, I mentioned how the system will not even allow you to save if you do not have an item selected here. And that is the case. If I didn't have an item selected here, notice it's yellow, but when I hit save, it's going to say, sorry, didn't fill something in. That being said, a really important thing to mention is that if you don't have services tied together with income items to even begin with, the system is going to allow you to generate that multi-invoice. But if you try to post it, it's going to say, sorry, you don't have a certain income item, you don't have a certain service tied to an income item, and you're going to have to go in and open that up and manually select it. The point I'm trying to make here is that it's really, really important that you go into the admin section under Integrate Accounting, set up QuickBooks integration, and you map those services. You want all of your services mapped to income items. Even if that income item is something like professional fees or agency services or something really generic, it's really important that those are mapped at the start. And anytime you create a new service, the system's going to tell you if you don't map it right away, it's not going to be a disaster. It's going to tell you, hey, you don't have this mapped. But it's just best if you do it right at the onset. And if we look at all these, I believe that they're all mapped. So I do have everything in my system mapped. So you'll notice we're not seeing any blank fields there. And I can come in here and I can edit the invoice. I can adjust the billing percentage. I can put manual values in. I can do whatever I want. The multi-invoice is a shortcut, but I'm creating an invoice here, a total of $24,460.90. Click Submit and Next. That is my invoice created. We are now looking at an invoice details page for invoice B129. And this is a single invoice. Notice that I have all the jobs listed below. And when I hit unposted, just as before, it changes the status to the status of posted. Now when I bring this over to QuickBooks, one thing that the way that our system is set up, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this, the way that our system is set up is that you need a job in order to have an invoice against it. So when we send this over, we have corporate website, we have internal signage program, we have travel kit and package design. These are the jobs that I have in Function Point. When I choose to sync with FP, it's going to create Great Atlantic Insurance, and it's going to create the job corporate website, because it's taking whatever the top job is and using it as an area to put that invoice against, because the system requires a job in order to have an invoice against it. Now, and I was speaking with our team about this a few times over the last few days, and just this morning, I actually was reviewing an email from a client of ours that may or may not be on this webinar, I'm not sure, just yesterday, that was saying, hey, I'm doing a multi-job invoice, and it's creating one of the jobs in QuickBooks. I just want it going to the company. I don't want it to just pick a job and put it all there. Right now, that isn't possible. Right now, it's going to take whatever the top job is in the list, and it's going to use that job as the job to put the invoice against. So here's our invoice 129. Notice B129, it's batch 129, invoice 129 for $24,460. Now, because this is all for one client, it's going against one client, Great Atlantic Insurance. And I can see that I've invoiced 129, accounts receivable, $24,460.90 to Great Atlantic Insurance. Just like before, I can mark it as paid. It's going to bring it back in and change the payment amount and payment method and all that stuff. But I just want to make sure everyone is really, I want to make sure I'm clear and everyone is understanding that it's going to take whatever the top job is and put the total value of that multi-job invoice to that top job. That is going to work differently than a multi-job, that is going to work differently than a multi-invoice create. So taking a look at that process, one thing I want to mention here quickly is just like before, we're going to get a status of exported. But looking at a multi-invoice create for separate jobs, let's do a find here. I'm going to say, just show me everything that's open. Show me all of my active jobs, basically. So here I have a bunch of open active jobs. Let's add an invoice for this. Let's call this May 8 webinar batch. Now the system knew to name the other one after the client because it was one client. In this case, it's just asking what the name is because there's multiple clients. So I would typically recommend putting something about the date in there. Notice that there is no checkbox to create a single invoice because it's for multiple jobs and multiple clients. There's multiple clients in the list. Therefore, it's impossible to create a single invoice. You can't have multiple jobs for different clients all on one invoice. They need to be separate invoices unless it's all for the same client. Let's say I'm billing 25% of estimated. And now here's a long list. And notice that all the clients are different. So we're seeing a bunch of different invoices for different clients. Let's go ahead and add a bunch in here. One for Bird Street Golf, one for Kingsgate Driving School, one for Branson, one for Great Atlantic, one for, let's say, I want to do one more. Let's do this Flight Center one here. So I've gone in and I've added a whole bunch of invoices. And click Submit Next. That is my batch invoice created. So we're looking at the May 8 webinar batch. The difference is that because we created multiple single invoices all at the same time, the reason that we did that is because it was all for different clients. The unposted button is now invoice specific. Looking at the batch, these are all the invoices I created. This one was for Bard Street Golf. This one was for Kingsgate Driving School. This one was for Branson Incorporated. This one's for Great Atlantic Insurance. This one's for Flight Center. These are all separate invoices for separate clients. I just happened to create them all at the same time. Notice the status, letting me know these are all unposted. So what I can do is I can choose to, maybe I'll post this one. Oh, here we go. That's a good example. Media online. It's letting me know that I actually don't have. This is a good example. I kind of wanted to show this error message. So it's letting me know that I don't have a income item tied to media online. So if I go and I choose to edit this item, let's see if I can edit it from here. Actually, my apologies, service groups. There we are. So if I edit my service groups, what we're going to find here is I had an expense called media online that is not mapped to an income item. So earlier on, I was going through my list and I was mapping all of my internal services, and it looked as though I left some external expenses as being unmapped. So when I tried to post it, it said, "Sorry, you can't. This is the name of the service that is not mapped to an income item." Save that, and now we will be able to post this invoice. Maybe I want to post some of these, but not all of them. But I'm basically able to go through and choose to post each of these. If there was another service for one of them that was not mapped to an income item, just like before, when I click the button, it would say, "Sorry, you don't have a mapping, and this is the name of the item that you don't have mapped." And I'm just going through and basically posting the batch. I want all of these going over to QuickBooks. I now have in my batch a whole bunch of posted invoices. Now, this was kind of covered a bit in the last webinar, but I mean, the purpose of this type of batch invoicing is often things like, say, retainers. If you have 40 retainer jobs, or even if you have 10, or 5, you have 5 or 10 retainer jobs, you can go in and do a batch invoice, and in just a couple clicks, invoice all of them all at the same time for their retainer amount. Another example would say be time and materials. If you're just going to bill all the unbilled time and materials for a month, then at the end of that month, you would do a job find for the work type of time and materials, invoice them all at the same time, couple clicks, the whole invoicing process is done. That'll then bring you to the batch, and you then post the ones that you want to get sent over. The process in QuickBooks, just like before, if I choose to synchronize with FP, what's going to happen here is it's going to create a whole bunch of clients for us. I'm going to create a whole bunch of jobs, because we had in our list there a whole bunch that weren't in there before. So notice it's creating all these clients, it's creating all these jobs for us, it's dropping in all the invoice numbers, we're watching it happen in front of our eyes as it goes through the process there. We can open up any one while this is doing its thing. Probably best just to wait for it though. Give it a minute or two, let it run its thing. Like it was an OK message there in the next couple seconds. So that's the process for then sending over a multi-invoice creation. And that process is really the same if you're doing them in a batch or if you just have a whole bunch of posted invoices. It's going to send them all over, and we now have all these invoices. That's not what I wanted there. There we are. There's our invoice. Notice I have all the whole bunch of items here that were mapped to professional fees. So yeah, so that's the process for sending over a multi-invoice crate, so multiple invoices for different clients. The next thing we're going to be taking a look at is the process for a deposit. Any questions so far yet, Emma, that we want to check in on?
Hey, Mark. I think we're okay for now. There's a couple that we'll want to review and definitely a couple that we'll address outside of the session for sure.
Okay, no problem. So let's now take a look at the process for a deposit. So I'm going to pull up a job here. I have one in mind. I created here called Dealership Website. I use this client, North Shore Auto Group, for almost everything that I do. I just made it up, and then one day someone let me know that in Australia there's a company called North Shore Auto Group. So I guess they do exist, but I actually just kind of made them up. I use them for all my examples. But let's take a look here. So I have a job for an auto group called Dealership Website, and we estimated $35,000. Now let's say that we're going to do a deposit for $10,000. Now the client is going to pay us a $10,000 deposit, and we're going to sync that over to QuickBooks. And then what's going to happen is we're then maybe going to send them an invoice at a milestone. We're going to bill them $20,000 at an agreed upon milestone. When we bill them that $20,000, we're going to apply the $10,000 deposit. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose to add an invoice, and it's going to be a deposit. It's going to be for $10,000. Create that. That's my deposit created. Now the AR count, this is something that is mapped in the back end, and I'm not entirely sure why it's not autofilling. I was asking one of our support staff there about that before the webinar, and we'll have to take a look at it because that should autofill because it is mapped correctly in the back end. But right now it's not autofilling for me, so I'm needing to select the AR count. Just like before, if I've tried to submit with a yellow fill blank, it's going to turn it red. So I'll select that, hit submit. I have a deposit for $10,000. I post it, and then in QuickBooks, we're going to choose to sync this. Now it's going to create our job for us, Dealership Website. It's going to bring over here's our Dealership Website there, $10,000. So here's our invoice 135 for $10,000. And what we can see is that this has gone over into a retainer account. That's the name of my account. In fact, I actually meant to rename it before the webinar. My apologies. The name of the account is irrelevant, but in this case, I happen to call it a retainer. But the point that I'm trying to make is that this is going into a other current liability account. It could be called whatever, but this is a other current liability account for advanced customer payment. So advanced customer payment, other current liability. This is representing advanced customer payment for work that we have not yet done. So that is that deposit there of $10,000 going into it's a single line going into my deposit item that's tied to the other current liability account called, in my case, advanced customer payment. Now, just like before, if I want to pay this or if I want to receive a payment, I'd go ahead and receive a payment. $10,000 check number 89217. Save that. That's paid. Run the sync. So we sent the client a deposit invoice for $10,000. They're going ahead and they're paying us that. We're syncing. It's going to be brought back into function point. Should be over in just a second there. Okay. So what we'll see now is when we take a look at this invoice here, we're going to see it's a status of exported, payment method check. Notice that the payment method has been brought in now because I did go ahead in the back end and I mapped it correctly. And the payment amount is $10,000. So they've paid us for this deposit. Now let's say that we've now hit some sort of milestone, and we're going to be billing them, I don't know, maybe let's just say 50%. Let's say we're going to bill them 50% of the $35,000, and we're going to be applying all $10,000 of the deposit. What I'll do is I'll choose to add invoice, and it's going to be an interim in this case, and it's going to be for 50%. Click Create. That's our invoice created. Scrolling down, you'll notice that we can see a line called Less Deposit. This line exists because there is a deposit on this job that has a value that hasn't been paid back yet. Now I'm going to choose of my $17,500 invoice to apply all $10,000 of the deposit. Notice it changed the value from $17,500 to $7,500. Save that. That is our invoice created as a 50% milestone where we've applied all of the $10,000 deposit. Notice invoice amount $17,500, less deposit, $7,500 being the total. Post it in QuickBooks. Let's jump back here. I like to close down these windows sometimes just because I'm the type of person that can't stand having all the different tabs open. It's no real need to do that. I'm just one of those people. When I look at my colleagues who have like 50 tabs open on their monitors, it just drives me crazy. I don't know how they do it. I try to have like no more than 2 or 3 at any given time, and even then it makes me anxious. But I'm going to choose to synchronize with FP. Now notice dealership website, value 0. The client's paid that $10,000 deposit. We're going to see a value here jump in at the same job line, dealership website, for $7,500. There it is. There's our $7,500. When we look at this, we can then see our invoice 135 for $10,000. We then have the payments that I put on a random number, 89217. That was the check number for $10,000. The account went into undeposited funds. I do apologize about that. I actually meant to have a checking account set up, and I don't think that I did. So so that's why it's going into into that particular item there. But this would, as opposed to undeposited funds, you typically see that in your checking account or wherever you happen to receive funds. This isn't the best example. It's just I don't have a checking account in my QuickBooks, therefore it's just going into undeposited funds. Again, it's not really all that relevant. I just wanted to mention it in case anyone's looking at this and saying, well, why is that in undeposited funds? That doesn't make any sense. They're correct. It doesn't. It would go into the appropriate account. It's just the way that I have it set up. But again, $10,000. It's been paid. We're now looking at invoice 136 for $7,500. It is a $7,500 invoice because we applied the $10,000 deposit to the $17,500 invoice. Open it up, just like before. We can see all the detail. There's the total less $10,000. You mark this as paid. $7,500 check. Check number, whatever it may be. Save that. Run the sync. And then this is going to be brought back into function point as this invoice being paid, just like before. Any second now. There we go. Taking a look at this invoice here again. It is exported and paid. $17,500. $10,000 deposit applied. $7,500 total. $7,500 paid, and it's exported. So that's the deposit, process. I know that I had some questions from a client the other day around how to apply, the deposit for the final payment. So they are, their situation is they'll take a deposit, $10,000, whatever, and then they'll do maybe 3 invoices at milestones, and the third one is the very final one. They don't apply the deposit until the very final one. Well, in that case, all you're doing is it's on the third invoice where you're going in and you're applying that available deposit. So the process is you just apply it wherever it's applicable to whatever invoice you want to apply it to. The next few things on my list are, and I just want to pat myself on the back for being exactly on timing. I'm not going over.
Oh, Mark, yes, you've done very well on your time today. I will chime in to congratulate you on that as well.
So the next few things I want to touch on are some common errors, some common problems that you can have while working with this. One thing I've kind of touched on a bit so far is that there used to be more problems around if you didn't have the accounts or the services mapped to income items, and you're going to get a message when you try to run the sync. That's not the case anymore. As you've seen twice today, it's going to give you the error message before you even try to save or post the invoice. It's not going to let you get to that stage, and it's going to tell you what item is not mapped and then allow you to map it on the fly. And it's also going to remind you to go into the admin section and do that at the back end. But a couple of potential problems here. One is inactive clients, and this is something that our support team was telling me that they see. Let's look at an example here. Let's say McDonald and Company. Let's say McDonald and Company is now going to be an inactive client. I hope I can remember. Here we are. So I'm going to McDonald and Company. We're no longer working with them. The customer is inactive. They actually saw the balance on there, but save it, yes. So they're gone. Active customers, they are no longer in the list. When I look at all customers, they are McDonald Company. Notice the X's because they're not active. Now, when I try to do something with them, let's say I'm going to do a job find for company name MacD. Find jobs. Here's our list here. Let's say, let's use this guy, employee handbook and training guide. Select it, add an invoice. Maybe it's going to be for 50% of estimated, for time's sake. And I'm going to post that. And in QuickBooks here, let's choose to sync. We are going to get an error message there. It's not going to work. Now, this one, the instructions we're going to get are it's a little bit tricky. It's not going to tell us, hey, this item, this McDonald & Company is inactive. Unfortunately, it's not going to give us that detailed of an overview as to why it's not going to work. So error while running task, please go to function point admin, integrate accounting, review posted items to get more details. So it's telling me to go into the admin section under integrate accounting and review posted items, where I'm then going to see a bit of an overview. The record's been modified in QuickBooks. So it's giving us a bit of an overview that the customer has been modified in QuickBooks. Unfortunately, it's not saying, hey, McDonald & Company is inactive. It's telling us the related table is customer and the record has been modified. So that lets me know that it is the customer that is the problem, and it's been modified. So what is different about it? Well, let's take a look here. McDonald & Company is now active. Okay. And what we're going to actually see is the data is in there. Our invoice 137 here, which is the invoice that we literally just did, our invoice 137 is actually in there. So it brought it in. Once the second we made that item active, it's now in there. It's now okay. When it was inactive, it's not going to work. It can't. But once it's active, it then brings that invoice in and applies it to the active customer. Now, that's really the only potential problem you could get. And the reason being is that if you make other changes, like let's say the company name, and I was testing this earlier, McDonald & Co. I have them in my function point system as McDonald & Co. I have them in QuickBooks as McDonald & Company. If I wanted to just be McDonald, that's not a problem. It's still going to work. And the main reason is that at the very bottom, there's a field called QB customer name, McDonald & Company. Now, how that gets applied is if I go ahead and I add a company, and I call this Mark Co. And let's just leave the rest blank here, but Mark Co. The system is automatically going to use the QB customer name, and I actually believe that this happens when you run that first sync. My apologies, it does. When you run that sync, it's going to fill in QB customer name Mark Co. Now, if I go and I change this like I just did with McDonald & Company, so let's change McDonald & Company. It's already changed to McDonald & Co. Let's just change it to McDonald and submit that. That's fine because McDonald & Company is still there. So if I were to go and add an invoice for our employee handbook and training guide, it's still going to work. But let's go one step further. Let's change employee handbook and training guide to just employee handbook. We're changing the name of the job too. So what I have here is in QuickBooks, I have McDonald & Company, employee handbook and training guide. Employee handbook and training guide. In function point, I have McDonald, employee handbook. They're two completely different things, but they're mapped using the number and the QB record. So when I add an invoice here for, let's say, another 50%, just for the sake of simplicity, this is now invoice number 138. I post it. Company's inactive in QuickBooks. And I thought that I made them inactive. McDonald & Company. Customers active. Let's see here. You know what? Oh, my apologies. I probably need to run a sync. And then it'll bring that back over. At least I hope so. It's running so smoothly. I'm crossing my fingers here that in my attempts to show you some potential errors that I haven't created one that I cannot overcome. Well, let's find out here in a second. So the system, when I made McDonald & Company inactive and I ran that sync, it told function point, hey, this is an inactive company. I then made that company active in QuickBooks, and so it took the invoice and said, okay, we can put it here now because the company's active. But I didn't sync it again, which therefore means that function point had no idea that that is a now active company. Once I ran the sync is how the two systems talk to each other. Now I no longer have the problem because the company is active and function point knows that it's active. So I posted that invoice, we'll sync. What we're going to see is McDonald and Company employee handbook and training guide is going to change to employee handbook. Notice the words and training guide just vanished because I made that edit in function point. There's our invoice 138. I brought it over. Notice McDonald and Company didn't change. McDonald and Company is not changed to McDonald. And the reason is that McDonald and Company matches what we have in function points for the QB customer name. We've taken these steps because we had clients encountering all these problems because they're constantly changing the names of their clients in their system. They're changing the names of jobs in the system. And we've made it so that you can do that and the system is going to cooperate with you. It's not going to give you any problems as far as name changes and all that type of stuff. So go ahead and feel free to do that. The only thing you might want to look out for is that in QuickBooks and in function point, you're going to have name discrepancies. So you may want to go in here and either go into QuickBooks and make the change there too if you don't want some discrepancies in the company name. So that's inactive client. That's a name change. That's actually the only two errors that I was able to come up with our support team that were really common that I'd be able to show and then overcome on the webinar. So I don't really have any others. I'm trying to think of some on the fly, but I kind of can't.
Well, Mark,
Emma,
sorry. Yes, oh, I'm interrupting in perfect time. I was just going to say that Omar in our support team had done up a really nice common error document for us. And so everyone's going to be getting sent that following the session. So for those you can't think of today, there are more that he had thought of that probably aren't as common as what you've shown us.
Awesome. Well, that's perfect. Any questions that I can answer at this time at all?
I don't think so. Again, we've got a couple that I think will be suitable for taking offline. So I don't want to sort of get you off your game. And it is 5:02, so I'm thinking we should maybe let people go. And then those couple that have come in, you and I can address soon after today's call and get back to those people specifically. But up to you. I leave it up to you and up to the group what they'd like to do.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, let's see. If we can, answer those offline. I mean, and I
Sure.
didn't want to go over time today as well because I know
Yeah.
that I got in a bit of trouble. The boss, when he heard how long I was answering, was a little upset. So I want to make sure that I keep it within the time.
Fair
But
enough.
do know everyone that we are going to follow up with answers, and then also hop onto calls with you if you did want to review something live. We'll be happy to do that. Um, unless there's anything that jumps out at you that is something that we might be able to address based on your judgment.
Okay. No, well, I think it's better that we probably take these ones offline, just given the time, and then we can address these people specifically for their questions. So what I might do, unless is there something else you'd like to show us before I sort of take presenter back from you?
No, go for it.
Oh,
It's all yours. That's all I
oh,
got. So
that's
thanks for thanks
no.
for sticking around.
Oh, hey, well, I'm kind of obligated. So what choice did I have? I am just now battling go to webinar. Okay, I'm just gonna make presenter. I'm gonna make myself the presenter here. And I'm just going to show my screen. So hopefully you're just seeing my background image there for now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
see.
Now I'm bringing over the PowerPoint here.
See, like this is a
The
background image, and then downloads.
You don't see the agenda?
Nope.
Oh, geez, that's because I was sharing my main screen. It likes to do that to me lately. I've noticed it's now you should be seeing the agenda.
There you go. I like
Okay.
the picture of the hedgehog in the little tower.
Oh, and oh yes, the snaggletooth hedgehog. Yeah, I've noticed. So apologies for that, everyone. Luckily, I didn't have anything too outrageous on my main screen there. That could have
Emma
ended
is
badly.
the Emma is the sender of cute pictures. So if you're
Well,
a client of ours and you're working with Emma, expect some cute pictures.
there are worse things to be accused of, at least. But yeah, I've noticed with GoToWebinar that I've been sharing the wrong screen a lot lately, and I'm not sure if I should blame the user, that's me, or the system. But again, it could have been a lot worse. So just wanted to point out before we let everyone go that yes, by all means. please be, and everyone can't see my screen because it's telling me now it's paused. No, show. There we go. To encourage you to check out FP Help. So from your own system to hover over Help and choose training, choose the community forum, choose what's new. You'll find all sorts of information there. Following the session, you will be getting a message from GoToWebinar as well with some links back to documents. And then next week, Mark, it's going to be you and Jeremy doing the session all about customizing invoices. So same bat time, same bat channel, just a week from today, yes?
That is correct. We will miss you, Emma, but I'm sure
Oh,
that Jeremy
you.
will be able to do a mostly good job in filling your shoes.
Oh, well, I'm sure he will. He'll be very well suited to answering a lot of the questions that people have. And then just, that's the snaggletooth hedgehog, for those of you who didn't see it on my other screen. So yes, if you do email me, expect to receive that kind of high quality animal related material. It's so cute, though. You can't resist the snaggletooth hedgehog. Excellent. Well, I look forward to you guys having a good session next week. Don't forget to record it. That's all I would advise you on. And then what we'll do is we'll stop talking here, and Mark, you and I will look at these questions and get back to these few just ASAP here.
Awesome.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much. I'm going to stop recording and we'll stop chatting, but thanks everyone for joining in today.
Thanks, Emma, and thanks everyone as well.